welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Darren Monk was very early there, wasn't he? Didn't even have the credits out and he was there. Wayne Gardner, lovely to see you again, Wayne.
Good to see a lot of people. I'm expecting a lot of people to turn up to this one today, actually. It's going to be a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll be interesting, I'm sure. How's your week been?
It's been really good, actually. Oh, well, I say it's really good. It's been barbarically hot. I've actually had to relocate. So everyone who's watched the podcast before and seen me waving a flap in my hands knows that I usually do it from my little office garden. Garden office, whichever you want to go. But it got to 33 degrees in here the other day, 33 degrees. And although, I sit here and sweltering and I could manage that, the poor dogs were just sort of like melting into the corner. So yes, it was a bit much. How have you guys found the heat? Being out and about and doing things.
Just get on with it, don't you? To be honest with you, I like now the weather bothers me more for the bees than it does for me. So like when it's hot, it's good. And I look at changes and how that's going to affect the colonies and blah blah blah. And I'm trying to plan what I'm going to do on a Saturday off what's happening during the week. So that's probably the only difference it makes to me. I do have some interesting news for you though. Kia turned up on Sunday. I should go and get her, shouldn't I? Should I go and get her?
Oh, the new pup turned up.
Yeah. She's here. Should I go and get her? That's her. Yeah, can you hear her? Stay there. Should we just get Nigel on? I'll go grab him. We'll just not stay there. I'll go grab her.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening back to the podcast at the moment and you are not seeing what's happening, Sean is so excited about his brand new pup. If you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, he has been awaiting this pup eagerly for the last little while. And she's turned up. So make sure that if you're on Spotify, you hit the video function right now because there is a spaniel on the screen and she is tiny. Look at that.
Little wiggler. Yeah. She can stop here for a little bit with me. She's been no bother really. She's not what I thought she was going to be. She's very intense. She's going to be a chewer. I guarantee it. I think because she's very clever, she's going to be a chewer. She's picked up stuff pretty quick, and she has a lot more drive than I was expecting. Like, you've got to watch her for heights because you can't put her up anywhere sort of high, a van seat or anything, because she'll just jump off it. Committed, total committed. She's got, which I guess is what we want. We want that drive. We want that sort of push, that determination. It's just annoying when they're a pup in it because you've got like 12 months of just dealing with an idiot, haven't you, before you can do anything with them. So I guess we'll see what comes. Just heading in the right direction.
I absolutely loved Pip when she was a pup. I mean,
I hate puppies. Hate them.
No. Hate them. How can you hate puppies? Like, how can you just hold up that adorable animal and just be like, I hate puppies?
Because it's boring, isn't it? You want to get on, don't you? It's like 12 months. So like the pee in your house, the poo in your house. You've got to deal with all that rubbish. Like, it keeps annoying the older dogs who are like now trying to get up a height out of the way, and she's like, she can climb like a cat. So they're as sick as a pig. Good job, the decent dogs, like, but she's just a little nuisance at the minute. But let's see what we can do with that. 6-8 months, we'll give you an update and see how she's gone.
Yeah, we need to set up some kind of puppy blog just for this, don't we? That's all good. So, away from your new pup, work been good? Yeah. Work been exciting? How many wasp nests have you done?
Loads. Coming in thick and fast, aren't they? I got called a bell end? Cock end, bell end. I think, well, I'm pretty confident it was me. Someone had put a comment on saying, what was it? was someone from a private firm who thought that the loss of FICAM, some bellend from a private firm who thought the loss of FICAM was an opportunity, which clearly it's me. I can't think of anybody else who said that. Yeah, bellend, yeah. So he called us that. And I said, oh, whatever. Like, but I looked at all his
you're
comments,
not the only one.
and every comment he's put on is fucking negative. So, you know, whatever. God bless.
You're not the only one. I mean, I'm about to say you're not the only one that thinks you're a bellend. No, you're not the only one with that opinion. Like, it is what it is, isn't it?
He's not the only one that thinks you're a bellend, Sean. Lots of people have that opinion. Fucking right to do. Who cares?
You're right though. We've said it. Veritas has said it. There's been articles out in magazines and newspapers. It's happened. It is what it is. Opportunity from adversity. Marcus Aurelius. The obstacle is the way. All of that jazz. We can either sit there and gripe and moan and bitch and say it's, you know, everyone's out to get me and stop me using my favorite toy. But the reality is, it's happened, and we have the opportunity to basically make something of it, to elevate ourselves. So
I tell you what, I've fasted every Friday from Friday dinner time through till the Saturday tea time. Starting to get the hang of it, but yeah, it's like I can feel it now. Yeah. If anyone hasn't done, don't eat.
I was desperately looking around to see if I got a packet of biscuits or something.
Don't eat, because that's unfair. That is absolutely unfair.
Yeah, work. You say that. Sorry, just to go back. It's the height of like British humour, though, isn't it? Because you remember when David Blake sat in that great big Perspex box over the Thames in London.
Yeah.
Like the first thing the British public did was bought a little remote control helicopter and flew it up and dangled a McDonald's at eye level. No, nobody appreciated this feat of discipline or endurance. Everyone was just like, let's see how close we can get the cheeseburger to the starving man in the box.
Tell you what we did do today, which is quite interesting. We're doing a bit of gutter cleaning for a place. We have a valley walker, and someone wanted us to do that, so we went up to have a look at it. Dale had Billy in the van with him, so I said, get him out. He got him out, and obviously the seagulls just went ballistic, and they were going that wild that the guys in the car garage just around the corner come around to see what it was, and we're like, can we get your number? We've been looking for someone for ages. They're like, if that isn't like a calling card, I've never heard of one that is. Like, literally, they just screamed that loud for that long that every single person in the business come out and had a look, and got a lead off it, so that's quite good.
I actually, certainly not a lead, but you know, I do a little bit of still pest control, kicking about here, there, and everywhere, just to keep my skills sharp, keep me in the game, to keep my head where it's meant to be. You just read the banner, haven't you?
Yeah.
Sorry, to finish my story, like I had a young guy, and this was it. This is really interesting because it was this week, immediately after last week with the EDI thing. I had a young guy, 21, walk up to me and say, "That seems really cool what you're doing. How do I get into this?" And as I stood there, sort of like with my bee suit half up, which I was being like, "Sorry, what?" And he's like, "It looks really cool. How do I get into this?" And I was like, "This is amazing." So it shows that there is an appetite for people to get into this industry. And I was just like, have you ever thought of pest control before? And he's like, no, I've just seen you a couple of times. And actually, the more I think about it, the more I think that'd be a thing. So it is definitely the fact that just we're an invisible entity to a lot of people. And that's what the issue is. But it was so serendipitous to happen literally a week after we had that meeting with Julia, which was fantastic. Oh my God, there are people just fucking. I'm gonna take that down now because I thought it'd be funny, and it's people are really leaning into this. Sorry for anyone listening back. I put a banner at the bottom saying, "Tell us what you're having for dinner," just for research purposes. Expecting one or two comments, and there is about 15. Right, let's put Sean out of his misery and let's talk about something important, shall we? Who have we got on tonight?
Nigel Cheeseright, the newer CEO of CRRU. We've had Alan Buckle on previously before he swanned off into the sunset to do his own stuff eventually after like 300 years in pest control. So we've now got Nigel.
That, yeah.
Let's see where we're at with CRRU here. I know this one's been pushed hard by Hugh, hasn't it? He's done a good job of promoting this. The only thing I would say is it's amazing the amount of people who've commented. I guarantee you none will come on and comment, which I find frustrating. If you've got something to say, then stand up and say it, put your time aside. But if you're here, put your comments, questions in the thing. If we can get them in, we usually can. We'll get your questions in for you.
Lovely. So welcome to the stage, Nigel. So there are those who have been in the industry a while will have known you've had a long history in the industry prior to becoming the new CRRU chair. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your life in the industry before you joined CRRU, because I think that's probably a good place to start.
Okay, well, evening, gents. Good to be here. So my history in the pest control industry started in 2010. I joined Rentokil as on an interim contract. Actually, I was meant to be covering an organisation transition after. You probably remember Ian Pepper, the old technical services manager from Rentokil. He retired in 2010. And I was brought in just to oversee the transition, and ended up staying 11 years. So in that time, worked in the technical services team, looking after the range of rodenticide products and other products that Rentokil made.
Did you have a crossover with Savas?
Oh, Savas and I were colleagues for quite a few years. Yeah. Because in 2014 I took over the role of Group Product Development Director for Rentokil and Initial, and Savas was the Innovation Director at the time. So we worked pretty closely on a lot of wild and wonderful projects, and I saw that you'd had Savas on fairly recently, but yeah, we had some good fun together.
That's good. It's one of those industries, isn't it? It spans the world, and yet it's amazingly small, realistically, isn't it? The crossovers we have there. So with there, 11 years in Rentokil, products and innovations. Where to from there?
Well, I stepped down from Rentokil in August or the end of July 2021. I thought it was sort of time to go and do some other stuff. So I've been doing a little bit of consultancy. I've taken on the role of chairman of CRRU UK. I get involved in the odd project that comes up, but by and large, I spend a lot of time traveling, a lot of time on the golf course. So I sort of work in the chairman role on a part-time basis, but yeah, it's fascinating, and it's the CRRU and the industry have quite a few challenges ahead of them with regard to rodenticide products and in fact biocidal products. Lots of things are coming under pressure at the moment.
Yeah, and we'll put a pin in that because I'm sure that is going to be a question that someone will ask later, and if they don't, I will, which is how CRRU plays a role in how the biocidal product regulations work, especially now we have Brexited and we have the GB BPR as opposed to the EU BPR. But we'll get onto that in just a minute. Sean, I know you've been dying to have this meeting for quite some time, especially as we've had this transition. We've got a lot of things to talk about, and I know that there is one subject that's very close to your heart that we should probably start with, which is CPD.
Yeah, thing is, I'm a massive supporter of it. I always have been, and not necessarily because people get to learn, because I believe those who want to learn will learn. Me personally, I think CPD is the glue that holds us together. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If you if you look down that list of people, if I go through it now, who I know, Lulu met her at Pest Tech, you know, the Rupert met him here, you know, this is Jasmine met her through this, but she's been on the podcast. It's all CPD, isn't it? So all these people who you can go to, Hugh, become a very close pal of mine, met him through CPD. It's something that Patricia Page, CPD, again, I think it's something that's massively helpful for us. I believe that we take a wrong tilt on it. I believe it should be pushed as more of a networking and learning opportunity. But obviously we've got some changes this year, and it's probably good for Nigel to explain to everyone the changes that have happened, why they've happened, and how we are going to have to, what we're going to have to do in order to be able to buy professional use rodenticides.
Yeah, sure. So there are two main changes that were decided upon in the sort of towards the end of 2023, and the two changes were really required because, as you know, each year we report into a government oversight group who monitor what CRRU are doing, the results CRRU are getting, and just various things in the industry that are happening with regard to rodenticides. One of the measures that we have is around environmental exposure, and the environmental exposure is measured by the samples that we get from barn owl livers and the residues of second generation products or anticoagulant products that we find in barn owl livers, and that's a sort of a proxy for how exposed non-target wildlife is in I guess primarily in rural areas with the barn owl, because although CRRU's done a lot of good things, putting a lot of structures in place and a lot of control measures around the supply chain, one measure that we have yet to meet is the residue level in barn owls. And as a consequence, the CRRU directors took the decision to, first of all, remove open area use as an option for second generation products, which means that these products now can only be used either inside a building or in and around treating an infestation within a building. And the second point was to try and address the training gap that we saw in the agricultural area. As you know, a bit of a compromise had to be met back in the early days of stewardship, because, you know, quite literally, the vast amounts of people in farming could not be trained before the deadline. So a compromise was reached whereby people who were members of Red Tractor or similar type of assurance schemes were sort of grandfathered into being able to continue to purchase rodenticides by virtue of them being farm assurance scheme members. Now, from the end of this year, that will be changing, and everybody who purchases professional use rodenticides will either have to have an up-to-date training certificate within the last 5 years, or will have a training certificate prior to that period and be a member of a CRRU-approved CPD scheme.
So,
okay,
we've touched on a couple of big points here, but one of the ones that I'd like to touch on there, and this is primarily a podcast for pest managers, and so let's talk on behalf of the pest managers. The Red Tractor, let's say, let's not call it a loophole, but you know what I mean. You know, this abeyance for Red Tractor members comes to an end at the end of this year, doesn't it? And to my mind, it's not necessarily, well, is it coincidental? Is it correlation? Is it causation? But the fact that since stewardship began, users outside of this trained professional group, the professional pest managers, haven't yet fully brought themselves up to speed with environmental risk assessments. They haven't brought themselves up to speed with good practice. They are still operating largely as they have done for many, many years, even pre-stewardship. And of course, we haven't seen the residues come down. Pest managers, on the other hand, they're doing their training, they're doing their CPD, they are doing their environmental risk assessments, generally speaking, and yet they are responsible for probably a very small proportion of the rodenticides used in these rural areas. So with this change next year, are we expecting to see the stewardship levels suddenly take a dramatic turn downwards when we bring these other user groups under the full umbrella of CRRU?
Well, we think that the combined impact of the removal of open area use plus the training requirement for these users will have an impact, and we're expecting this to have an impact on the residues so that we can start to see a downward trend. And as Alan probably explained when he was on the podcast, residues have been quite static over the last, really since the start of stewardship. Residues have been fairly static. They're not increasing dramatically, but they are pretty much where they were at the start of the stewardship program. So yes, the answer to your question is we are expecting to see a decrease in residues. That's really what we're trying to achieve here.
And this brings me on to another thing, and we mentioned this very briefly before we came on air, which is how do we report misuse and abuse? So after we have done our training, we have done our training as the pest management community, we've got our CPD, we are re-qualifying every 5 years if that's the route we want to go, or we are maintaining our professional development. But let's say we go to a farm or we go to a rural area and we find someone who is still baiting in open areas from one of these other groups, not the general public, because I appreciate that CRRU doesn't actually have any remit over that, but the other stakeholder groups, so farmers and gamekeepers. Let's say we find bad practice happening there. A lot of people assume that the person we go to complain about that will be you guys at CRRU, but that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, that's right, Alex. CRRU doesn't have any enforcement role whatsoever. We're in charge of the stewardship program, and we need to ensure that information is disseminated, best practices are communicated and developed. But you raise a really good point. Quite often when I talk to pest controllers, or when you're at trade shows talking to different people, virtually everyone has an anecdote about how they've seen cases of misuse of rodenticide. And what I would like to sort of bring to people's attention is that the WIS scheme, which has two main roles. So the Wildlife Incident Investigation Scheme is there for two primary purposes. One is to investigate when wildlife has been affected by pesticides. So they will investigate the causes of animal deaths, and they will try and reach findings and conclusions and potentially take enforcement action against the perpetrators. But another role that they have, and I don't know if everybody's aware of this, is that they also are a body to which the misuse of pesticides can be reported. And I would encourage everybody who sees these products being misused to report this through to the authorities, because this type, if people are seeing misuse and not reporting it, that misuse could lead, or maybe a combination of misuses could lead to rodenticides being seriously affected in the future. So, if you see bad practice, and you think it's worthy of reporting, then please take action and do that.
It's interesting you say this. I mentioned this before as well. So when I was doing the consultancy, I actually hosted a anonymous portal for people to submit misuse and abuse, and I made it very clear that it's on there, put on Facebook forums and the rest of it. And nobody actually put anything in. Nobody sort of like put anything down. I think there's an element of those who are in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. We're all guilty of cutting corners from here and there. But I think what we need to really remember here is there is a gaping chasm between what's considered to be poor practice and what is considered to be bad or illegal practice. Poor practice is, you know, maybe missing your window of returns by a couple of days, letting your bait boxes get a little bit grubby, letting, you know, forgetting to bring your labels with you, and so that label that's got its edges frayed, not necessarily replacing it as soon as you could. That's poor practice, and that's what we see a lot of people griping about. Bad practice, illegal practice, is what we should be focusing on, and that is using products off label, using products that are not registered for use in the UK, and we see that more and more happening with people buying things off Amazon and eBay. And that's what we need to focus in on as a community, is those elements of misuse and abuse, not necessarily trying to sort of like bring our competitors down with what we consider to be poor practice. But, you know, that was one. We had a lot of others. We had some other good questions in as well. You highlighted one of them, Sean, I think was a good question to lead with from the, yeah.
Hi, Nigel. Do you think CRRU goes far enough? And that come from Paul O'Brien.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for the question, Paul. Well, I think from the two measures, you know, so let me start off with saying that part of CRRU's role, you know, we see the importance of rodenticides in pest control, and really we're trying to take measures so that we can meet the goals set for us by the government oversight group, whilst at the same time keeping rodenticides and second generation rodenticides in particular in your toolkit. So we're trying to do that through balanced measures. You know, I recognise that the community we're talking to tonight are professional pest controllers working every day, every hour of the day within pest control, sometimes maybe rodent control 100% of the time. But farmers and gamekeepers, the rodent control of their role is a very small proportion of what they need to do. So we've tried to take a balanced view as to, you know, to give them sufficient information to be able to perform rodent control and to be able to use professional products without, you know, so we tried to find a balance there. Whether that balance is right, I guess only time will tell. But you know, we try to be proportionate in the measures that we've taken across all the user sectors.
I appreciate that, but definitely the question was, do you think it goes far enough?
Well, I mean, clearly as a representative of CRRU, we believe that it does go far enough to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
So this was the one that I was going to bring up next, because this has always been a little baffling to me. So if you don't mind, Sean, I'll take a bit of lead on this. How did we come? So at the moment, as it stands, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as of 2026, what you will have to do is one of two things. You will either have to take your basic or safe use or your RSPH level to whatever you want to call it, safe use rodenticides, basic use rodenticides, and you will need to re-qualify for that every 5 years. Alternatively, you will need to show that you have already achieved that qualification and then have joined a industry recognized CPD scheme, and then you'll have to have a minimum of 3 CPD points that are from a CRRU recognized source, and you'll have to continue and you'll have to show that every single year. Now, where did we get to 5 years from? Because 5 years seems like an incredibly long period of time. And in my mind, 5 years is so long that it will encourage people to simply do that at the expense of doing CPD, because it's easier to simply just do a one-day course every 5 years than have to persistently keep up to date over the course of, every year on year. So how did we get to 5 years? Where was that decision made?
Well, I guess there are a few points in there, and maybe I should go back to when I first started getting involved in the pest control industry. The discussion was all around, cowboys out there, totally untrained. Something needs to be done about the people who aren't trained at all. We've now got a basic standard for being able to purchase rodenticide products. But the 5 years is really based around the cycle of rodenticide approvals. That's one thing that we took into consideration. And also, things move quite slowly in pest control. So if we look at what's changed in terms of the rodenticide training over the last 5 years, the two changes that we're implementing now are probably the biggest changes that have occurred. So within a 5-year cycle between product authorizations, we're not expecting huge amounts of things to change. But when it comes around to the products being reauthorized, then it is possible that the HSE will require different things that we can then incorporate into the next round of training.
I mean, that works and it doesn't, because in the sense that, let's say I was to take my basic training today, but the product renewals occurred January 2026, I wouldn't have any oversight of that until I redid this in July 29. Sorry, we're 25 now, so July 30. I would have missed 4 years of those updates because I qualified 6 months early, and because I've not been doing CPD, because I've got no need to sort of like keep my pulse on the industry, I've been in the dark for 4 years and 6 months until I do my next thing and be like, oh crikey.
Yeah, well, not necessarily in the dark,
because they changed something.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily in the dark, because we will be communicating changes through, if and as and when they occur. But that was one of the considerations that was taken into account when the 5 years was selected. What I would say as well is we wouldn't expect professional pest controllers doing this 100% of the time in their job to stick with this basic qualification. I think there is a difference between farmers and gamekeepers and PCOs, because PCOs doing rodent control are doing it in different premises. They've got different risk scenarios. They've got potentially more complex scenarios to deal with when it comes to rodent infestations. Whereas on a farm, if it's your farm, you're dealing with the same premise, you're dealing with the same type of risk assessment. So things are ultimately more complex for the pest controller who's doing this 100% of the time versus your farmer or gamekeeper doing this for maybe 5% of their time.
So from that, the assumption that I'm hearing is actually with CRRU imagined, or that hasn't stated outright, that actually the 5-year path is probably going to be for pest management adjacent industries, farming and gamekeeping, those that do it for 5% of the time, and the CRRU and the CPD and the association to a CPD scheme is actually for the professional route, and that's how you see that divide occurring.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. People, Sean, I've heard you mention a few times that people will stop sending their employees or their colleagues on CPD related training and adopt for the safe use of the rodenticides route. And I would suggest that the people who are making that sort of decision are probably the people prior to this training being available that wouldn't have trained their people at all.
I think that's a cop-out, if I'm honest with you. I get it. I get what you're saying, but I think it's a cop-out.
My
think.
my experience from the pest control industry is that I mean, from my perspective, it's a fascinating industry, and there literally is something new to learn every day. But most pest controllers that you come across are eager to learn more, and so I think your general pest controller is eager to get more knowledge and be part of CPD. That's my experience anyway.
Yeah, there is an element of echo chamber in that, because we're talking to a load of people here, and they've given up a Friday to come listen to you talk, to listen to us natter away. And the people that we're talking to are not the people that we need to convert. And that's in my mind, one of the biggest issues within our industry. That if you are part of a trade association, you are, you are not preconditioned, but you've signed up already to learn, to be a part of that. If you listen to podcasts every Friday, you've signed up to be sort of like that learning. What we are missing, though, is that 40% of the industry which still remain rogue traders. And so does CRRU have through this mechanism, is CRRU going to try and reach that silent and, deaf, dumb and blind 40% of our industry? Is this a way for us to try and finally connect with them through this, or not?
Well, what we're setting is a minimum standard to buy professional rodenticide. So so people won't be able to buy professional rodenticide without having this qualification, or a qualification plus membership of the CPD scheme.
That's it. And Sean, I can see you're dying to say something, but I just to close this off. Go on.
I'm covered. No, you close it off. Go on, because I'm covered.
So I know a lot of people are going to say all that happen is those who do not do the scheme, those who want to operate out of the system, those who want to fly under the radar, will simply stop buying their products from licensed distributors, from reputable sources, and they'll simply just go online to internet resellers that don't have those same checks and measures. I'm not going to mention any names because that's fair, but we all know who they are. What can we do about that? As we said before, CRRU is not an enforcement or a policing agency. It's a stewardship group. Is Wiz the person that we are to speak to about this? Let's say I go online, I type, I want to find 50 ppm difenacum, 20 kilos of it. We can find it. It's easy to do. You could have it delivered to your house tomorrow. You can even, I've recently this week had conversations with people buying things in from the States that are not even registered in the UK. So what's the mechanism that we can use to highlight this to the powers that be? Because it's only going to damage us in the long run. So
if you find instances like that, I mean, all online traders need to adhere to the CRRU guidelines. And so they need to check that users who are purchasing the product are certified. And or at the moment have the relevant farm assurance scheme qualifications or association. And in the future, everybody's going to have a certificate. So if there are sites out there and you've got concerns about them, please contact the CRRU office, and we will make the necessary investigations. So quite often, when people have reported things through to us, we have posts and traders taken down from Amazon, for example.
That's really good to know, actually, because I think that's a big concern of a lot of folks with this new scheme, is people will circumvent it by buying from dodgy resellers. So there we go. Right, Sean.
I've always thought that CRRU was, I won't mince my words with it, I feel like it's pissing up the pest controllers back and telling them it's raining. That's how I feel about it. And I get really upset that they split pest controllers up, especially from farmers. See, when I don't know how the government got involved, but it seems odd that at some point someone's made the decision, done it, where they've said, listen, it's only professional use, it's not amateur use. The amateur use sales are huge, but they've said, no, don't look at them. Don't look at them. They're not on your remit. But nobody in the HSE would have turned around and said, do you know what it is? We think it's only professional, not amateur. Somebody somewhere at some point has said, do not look at the amateur use market. That's not important. So it's one of two things, isn't it? It's either the chemical manufacturers who now run our industry, don't they? Because they put CRRU together. So you've got like unelected people who are effectively running the industry. You know, all the big guys are on it, aren't you? You know, and let's be honest, when you have billions of pounds, when BSF, when Syngenta, when all them have billions of pounds, and I know it's dolled up in a package where that happens, but it's quite together.
Can I just
Yeah.
Okay, so so I mean, first of all, the HSE expressed a wish that they wanted to make amateur products still available to the general public, in order that people can tackle small, rat problems in their own home. The decision really, I think, has probably been done around volumes. You know, the vast majority of products, second generation anticoagulant products, go into professional pest control, and it's only a fraction of the volume that goes into. I'm not allowed to disclose that. That was shared with me recently following the HSE study of sales, but it's a fraction of the professional.
75%, couldn't it? Could be 3 and 4.
And I think you can sort of use the analogy. I've heard people say about insecticides and training for insecticide use. Well, the reason insecticides in pest control, or in sort of urban pest control, aren't regulated is probably because the farming industry uses by far the vast majority of insecticides. And if you look at the farming industry, you know, they've got a thing called the voluntary initiative, where the farming industry has been asked to take measures to put controls in place to control insecticides within farming. And they've got a set of guidelines and sort of parameters that they need to meet on a regular basis. And it's the same sort of thing in pest control. They're focusing on where the big volume is and how they can impact
Right.
sort of an 80-20 rule, if you like. Yeah.
This is exactly why I think it's pissing up our back and telling it's raining then. So if we can say that, I'm going to say a small fraction. We didn't say a fraction, but I was guessing from the inference that you drew that it was a small fraction. We can rule them out. When you stand there and you go, there's 190,000 farms, there's 10,000 pest controllers. If you say there's 40% we're not reaching, that's 4,000. But we're not really reaching the 190,000 farmers, are we? Because ultimately, and this is what annoys me. Are you professional pest controllers? You 10,000, you 6,000, whatever it is, you 6,000 that are going to do your CPD. You have to do 100 hours over the 5 years, and we know that you're probably not the problem. But the farmers who are, let's be honest, they're clearly the issue, and we know they're the issue from the way rodenticides are turning up in birds of prey. You're going to have to do a 2-hour online course every 5 years. And let's be honest, that is never, ever, 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 ever going to change the way a farmer puts poison down around his farm. I think if you speak to any people,
I think it's fair to say, Sean, that I've never spoken to anyone who thinks the problem is in their sector. If you talk to the farmers, it's the gamekeepers. If you talk to the gamekeepers, it's the farmers. If you talk to the pest controller, professional pest controllers, PCOs, it's amateur use or it's farmers. So, you know, so what I would say is that you can look at every sector, and you can find good practice and you can find bad practice. And what I would encourage is for each sector to get their own house in order. You know, what about the 40% of people who aren't members of trade associations and not doing CPD? You know, let's look at stuff we can influence within your sector, and let's get that right, because you stand a much better chance of retaining rodenticide use if you can demonstrate that these sorts of things are being done.
But CRRU literally had it within their powers to say all professional users would have to do 20 hours, wouldn't it? And it was only the PCOs who have picked that up. So they could have easily, I get they couldn't have got them trained in the initial. Absolutely get it. It's a huge industry. But I don't understand why it couldn't have been brought off. If we think that that's the point, like why this 5-year thing, it feels to me and to a lot of others, most people who are there, if you speak to them and they're honest with you, will say it's just because the ag sector has that much sway. And this is why I say to you, it feels like our industry is controlled by people with money, like your NFUs, you know, so that they can continue to keep making money and keep their customers happy. And the PCO takes it in the neck with 100 hours of, and don't get us wrong, I love CPD. I'm not complaining about it, but this is how it comes across.
Yeah, I don't agree with you, Sean. You know, I'm not sure that requesting a farmer to do 20 hours of CPD a year is even reasonable for the amount of for the amount of the proportion of their time they need to spend on pest control along with running a farm. So I would say we've tried to be proportional. Time will tell whether that has been effective or not, and you know we're ready to take further strengthening measures if deemed necessary.
I think you're right. 20 probably is too much for them, but I don't think it's too much to ask them to do the 3 that you are impressing on them, so that they know the importance of rodenticides. The 3 points that we have to do as a minimum. Why do farmers not have to do the 5? I'm not going to say farmers, but why does everyone, if you're going to buy professional, not have to do those 3 CPD points? That's not a big ask, is it? What, like an hour and a half's worth of work every year?
3.
What are you saying, Sean? Why aren't we asking the farmers to do that every year?
Yeah, so you know how we have to do 20 including 3. If they want to do the 5, if they want to do the redo the qualification every 5 years, get them to do that, but also ask them to do the 3 CPD points. And I don't think that is disproportionate, is it? If we believe that they are potentially one of the main problems with rodenticides getting into the food chain, not to the environment.
Well, I think we've all got issues to tackle within our own sectors. I mean, currently we're looking at barn owl residues, but one of the things that we're working on in CRRU is we're working together with the government oversight group, who commissioned 4 teams to look at different aspects of the stewardship regime, and they've asked for recommendations as to how the stewardship scheme can be strengthened in the future. And what we're seeing basically, and most of, I don't know if you follow any of the reports that come out around residues in wildlife, but it's not just barn owls. There are residues in foxes, there are residues in hedgehogs, there are residues in different species, and you know, as an industry, we're concerned that we've got widespread contamination in wildlife that we need to address collectively.
So does that not strengthen the case for asking them to do the 3 mandatory CPD points?
Sean, we've settled where we are, and you may be proved to be right in the future. But at the moment, that isn't part of the CRRU proposal, and we believe that getting them from 0 to having the level 2 qualification will increase their knowledge sufficiently that they'll be able to use the products appropriately in the field.
I'd just like to interject for a second and give you a little bit of breathing space and just sort of like take a bit of a sort of like a different look on this.
Can we make sure that he's fed next time he comes on the podcast?
It's not. The thing is, it's important, isn't it? I get proper passionate about it because it's something I love. Like it's something other people love, and we see the other side of it. Like when we're sitting there and you're thinking, "Oh, come on!" Like if you think about Bredificus, sorry, Al, you go on. Give us another slide.
No, I'm literally agreeing with you. Because it's weird that you said this, because we have CRRU in the UK, and we also have CRRU in Southern Ireland as well, which is CRRU Island. But that is unique to global pest control. Well, not necessarily unique. There are other, but it's probably one of the foremost ones out there. And my colleague and a just lovely guy, oh, hang on, Hans, says CRRU should expand beyond the UK, other regions of the world, such as Asia. And it shows that actually a lot of people around the world are looking to the UK to see how we are doing things, to see what we're doing. We are, despite the fact that this may seem like a lot of fuss, muss, and hard work, people are looking at us to see how we are managing our pesticide use, how we are self-stewarding ourselves. And there are huge swathes of the world who want to adopt into this program. So for us sitting on the inside of this bubble, it might seem like a very weird space, but looking from the outside, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And so I think that's why these conversations are so important to be had, because we need to understand we are leading the way here, in my opinion.
And I would just point out, Lex, that CRRU UK and CRRU Ireland are different entities. So I don't have any responsibility for the CRRU Ireland work. They obviously work with the Irish authorities and their own stakeholder groups, and the UK team is separate.
But I just thought I'd put an interjection in there, because of course it's all feeling very heavy, and it's sometimes very easy to lose sight of all the good things that the Romans have done for us. So
yeah, I think ultimately, Sean, we need to remember that we're all on the same side here. Although sometimes you may not feel as though we are. We are trying our best to maintain rodenticide products in your toolkit for something more than just indoor use.
I'll be dead honest with you. This is where I think it goes terribly wrong, and this is why I think CRRU gets the hammering it does from pest controllers, because it's sold as we're trying to reduce residues in barn owls, but my gut feeling is that its sole purpose is to make sure that we can continue to keep using them. Don't get us wrong. I believe it's so that the agriculture, the makers of it, the manufacturers, can continue to make a load of money off it. That's how I feel about it. But I think if people were told that, if pest controllers were told that and said, listen, suck it up, otherwise you won't have it, then I think there would be a lot more to it. And I'm absolutely convinced that that's what it is, that it's about selling rodenticide, and we want it. We're on the same page, but and this is why I say about it, like pissing up your back and telling your train, it's like, oh no, it's about this. It's not.
Yeah. So look, CRRU is 100% funded by the manufacturers, but the HSE, when they approached CRRU and they required that CRRU lead the coordination of the stewardship scheme, they required every authorization holder to be a CRRU member and contribute to the stewardship scheme, or the funding of the stewardship scheme. So it's their obligation as part of being an authorization holder to be a funder of CRRU. They can't get out of that. If they don't do that, then they can't sell their products in the UK.
Okay, get you. It feels to me like if you said CRRU has two goals, one of them is to continue to sell rodenticide, it has been 100% success. If you said it was to stop rodenticide getting into the environment, then it's been 100% failure. That's how it feels like to me. And I think if we were more on board with the you've got to do this to keep buying it, then we would be in a far better place.
Yeah, I mean, we've got work to do around the environmental exposure, absolutely.
But if we pick Bredificus, when CRRU first came about properly, I know it was a long time before, but when it first came about properly, like Bredificus was not being found in birds of prey. Like it wasn't there. And then for whatever reason, the CRRU said, listen, we're going to move it from indoors only to in and around buildings. And it's got more and more active within the samples that are being found. So it's not rocket science, if they really wanted to stop it.
Well, just CRRU didn't say that, Sean. So CRRU didn't say let's use it in and around buildings. The HSE said, I mean, Alan Buckle would be able to tell you this much better than I can, but I seem to recall when the active ingredients were being reassessed in the mid 2010s, the HSE came to the conclusion that all of the active ingredients were equally were equal in terms of their environmental risk assessment. So keeping Brodifacoum as an indoor use only product didn't make sense. They had to treat all the active ingredients the same, which then opened the door to use those products in and around buildings.
Yeah, but is this lobbying though? Is this lobbying from the powers that be, the people who have the billions, where they can?
No. It's I mean, if you dug deep enough, you'd probably be able to find the document online somewhere. But it's the environmental risk assessment performed by the HSE during the course of the BPR authorization process. In fact, I think there were several workshops held at the time to discuss this. So, like Scott.
I was about to say, as everyone knows, I have come from the M&D community. It's been my background. It's either been M&D or consultancy for my professional career. I would like to put this conception of lobbying to bed, because that's not how ECHA or BPR works. There is no lobbying. There is no taking someone else out for a nice meal and sort of like sweating. It's not like the political sphere. It's not like you can turn around to an MP and take them to a quiet room and have a conversation with them and show them power. It's not how ECHA works. How BPR works is there's a very set framework, and then when they want to make a decision, generally speaking, it goes out for what we call public consultation, and that is an open call to either specific areas of the industry or to any party going, and you can put in your case, and they're all put in side by side, and so you can't lobby. You can put your sort of like views and points across, and you can make a technically reasoned case, but it's so far away from lobbying. It's not like you can have one person with 10 billion pounds in their pocket overriding the opinion of someone who's just got 20p in a packet of polos, because both of those arguments, so long as they are technically reasoned, hold equal weight as the commission goes through and looks at them. So it's a bit of a misconception to say the more money you have, the better things that get pushed through, because we've seen a lot of times over the last 20 years where we've lost use patterns, or we've lost products, we've lost access to active materials from huge companies that you would have just been able to force an agenda, but they can't.
So are we saying then that we are now accepting that Brodifacoum is not more acute and more persistent within the environment when it gets into it?
Largely wasn't what I was with. Okay. From a technical standpoint, no, but the way that ECHA and BPR does their risk assessment, it's done on a weighted scale. And as soon as you go above a certain limit, all things are bad. So it's not the case that one is more bad than the other. They just consider all ESCARs to be equally bad at this. And so they're all lumped together. It ceases to have gradation past a certain point. And I think that's about right, isn't it, Nigel? It's not the fact that...
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But the question was, though, are we saying that Brodifacoum is not more acute and more persistent within the environment?
No, what we're saying is that all ESCARs fail the environmental risk assessment. So from that perspective, you can't differentiate. You can't say that one is better than the other in terms of environmental exposure.
If I rephrase that question, is Brodifacoum more persistent and more acute within the environment?
From a chemical standpoint, yes. From a regulatory standpoint, they're all bad. that's the differentiation between that. It's like saying, would you rather be shot
see
with
what
a
I'm
handgun
saying,
or a
though,
rifle?
You can see what I'm saying, though, can't you? That
Yeah,
the worst chemical, and then it's put in, and all of a sudden it starts turning up, and you're like, this is like there was a decision made by someone somewhere somehow, which has allowed that to happen. And why is it that we can turn around and say CRRU has turned around, or they've been instrumental, maybe is a better way of saying it, in saying no open use anymore, no open use, but we can't have the more. Would it not look better for an industry if it turned around and said, listen, the more acute, the more persistent ones are going to be indoors only? Because when we put them in and around, we started finding them turning up in the environment. But they're not going to do that because they want to continue to sell them, aren't they?
Yeah, I think there's probably more to it than that in terms of having resistance busting products that can be used around buildings as well as inside buildings. I think there's probably lots of different aspects to this, Sean, and and just to point out that Brodifacoum, right at the beginning, when the HSE were talking about not differentiating between these active ingredients, CRRU directors agreed that none of the products containing Brodifacoum, diphenthylidene, or flocumethane would be used for open area applications. So none of the manufacturers put in applications to use those products in open areas. So the two products that have been removed from open area use are bromadiolone and diphenocum. But they do have several manufacturers have products containing those other actives that you can use in and around buildings.
I think it's important to remember that we do have a range of choices available to us, and we're not going to drill down into the specifics of it, but there are other active materials that still do have a open area use pattern to them. So if that is something that you absolutely categorically need to do, there are products on the market that will still allow for that. And again, it comes down to this element of risk on those risk assessments. So we do have those. It's again, I just cycle back very briefly to, because we've apparently got very good international viewership today. We've got Singapore, we've got Germany.
I didn't realise that.
And this is a mirroring of what we're about to say, and a mirroring of we've got UK BPR and GB BPR and EU BPR. And you can see here that over in Germany, more regulations, only trained users and best practice, and showing a reduction in the environment is the only thing that they believe is going to keep SGARs in the toolbox of the professionals. So once again, showing that these initiatives are vital to our continued use of these things, of these products.
And for sure, I believe in Germany they have a pest control licensing scheme as well. So I think licensing is core to what they do in Germany, and obviously the various training levels within that.
Interesting to note that in the UK we have simply two distinctions. We have professional user and we have general public. And professional user contains all of those elements: gamekeepers, farmers, and public health pest managers. But in Europe, there are three categories, aren't there? We have trained professional, professional, and general public. So there is a further sort of like distinction or distinguishing between those user groups. Do you see CRRU UK trying to adopt a similar setup to that, to try and help pest managers further distinguish themselves from those other professional groups?
It's not a discussion I've had with the CRRU organisation at the moment, Lex, but it's a good point. I mean, in several European countries as well, amateur use is not general public use isn't an option. So it's just the professional categories that you're dealing with. So every European country deals with things slightly differently.
Here's something that crops up all the time. Why remove the F-gauze? It has less of an impact. Reasons being given is cost of recertification and lack of purchase from pest controllers. Surely CRRU could push for F-gauze.
Well, it's not really for CRRU to push for anything in this regard. I mean, we can't dictate to manufacturers what they decide to put on the market. And the fact is that all the companies who previously had first generation products in their portfolio have not decided to renew those authorizations. So there isn't actually an authorized first generation product available except in contact foam form. So all the baits and grains and so forth have been removed, not renewed by the manufacturers. So they're obviously seeing a significant decrease in their use.
But if we've been able to say to them from CRRU's point of view, and they've sort of pushed through that you have no open use on S-gauze, if you brought that back for F-gauze, would that not either confirm or deny who's responsible for it? So if it is open use that's causing it, or two, give us the opportunity to do stuff. And could we not? We have that ability to have that rodenticide testing done now, don't we, for resistance? Like, why can't you've got to use F-gauze in and around buildings or open areas. If you want to move up, and in order to do that, you have to have the proof that you have that resistance there. And it's not just a case of someone going, I put down 2 kilos and it went and it's still here, so we've got to jump from this to this with absolutely no knowledge at all. Is that not something that you could bring in, where you turn around and say, listen, here's your risk hierarchy, but a jump from here to here, it has to be quantifiable. You have to have had that testing.
Yeah, I think I haven't had a conversation about F-gauze. I mean, F-gauze were sort of on the way out, I guess, when I joined the industry in 2010. Not widely used at all. Probably partially because of resistance concerns. But if the products were effective and there was a market for them, the manufacturers would be producing those formulations. But so they're not. So it's not really a discussion that we can have. They're not on the market.
Yeah, but I think what Patricia was saying, and I agree with her, is that this is kind of what we expect from CRRU, right or wrong, that they do have those conversations with the manufacturers, and they do say to them how we know that the F-gauze are the least toxic, the least acute and the least persistent. Like, sorry, we need this conversation.
Yeah, that's not CRRU's role, with all due respect. I mean, that's not what CRRU are designed to do. CRRU are there to steward the products that the manufacturers as authorization holders put on the market. If they don't put those products on the markets, there are no products to steward.
I thought that CRRU's role was to bring down the residual rodenticides within those birds of prey and other animals.
Well, that's one of the metrics that we use to gauge our success. But if first generation products are on the market, it's a commercial decision from the manufacturers as to whether they put these products on the market or they don't. But if they don't put them on the market, there isn't a choice to be had, and it's not for CRRU to get involved in those commercial discussions. CRRU's not a commercial organization. Yeah, it's for the manufacturers themselves to make those commercial calls.
And someone wrote it, didn't they? Marking your own homework. That's what it feels like.
I think there's a bit of confusion here, and I'll step in. So I think what Nigel's saying is stewardship stewards products that are on the market. It doesn't dictate what products should be on the market. What products should be on the market is entirely a commercial decision by private organizations, their own R&D pipelines. It would be unfair if a company that's to turn around and say, you've got to spend millions of pounds to bring something different into the market, and at the same time drop what you're doing here. Stewardship is steward the what the landscape that we have, not to sort of like tell people how to do it. And just to go back to your earlier,
sorry, just so I'm aware, what I was trying to suggest was that CRRU turns around and says, instead of saying no SCARs in open use, it said FGARs in open use only. And then there is the market for them, isn't there? And that product is there.
theoretically it has. Because if you think about it, it's just said SCARs not, but your calciferols you can still use in open areas.
Yeah.
FGARs.
And FGARs would be a separate class from SCARs, you'd imagine.
I don't know. Is it? Is it not?
Sorry, what was the question, Sean?
No one knows.
No, yeah. It would, because you've said that SGARs aren't allowed in open use, does that rule out FGARs in the same thing? Or if it was there, would a manufacturer distributor be able to produce an FGAR and have open use rodenticide label on it or not?
Yeah. Well, I guess in theory it's possible, but what I'm saying is, if these products were effective for wide-scale rodent control, manufacturers would be making them and selling them and marketing them. And the fact that they've withdrawn them from the market is an indicator that they probably don't tick all those boxes.
And I will add to that. You mentioned before, Sean, that why couldn't we use FGARs first, and when we had a failure of FGARs, move on to using SGARs, like a proper escalation principle?
Hang on a second now, and I want to clarify that. I mean in like your sort of agricultural settings, the places where we believe that this is getting pushed in.
Yeah, and I just want to say that they did a similar thing in the Nordics for a little while. I think they still do, which is in the Nordics, if you are called out to any pest management job, you have to abide by the escalation. You have to show that you've tried to use FGARs first, and then you move on to your second generations and alternative controls next. But from what I understand, talking to pest managers over there, largely what happens is someone turns up and says, "You've got mice. I'm not going to waste your time putting stuff down. I'll see you in a month when this stuff has failed." And then they come back in a month, and then lo and behold, there are still mice, because they are all fully cognizant of the fact that the FGARs are functionally not effective against the populations of mice they have in Bergen and Oslo, and I think it was Copenhagen I was in when I had this conversation.
Yeah, and from a resistance point of view, not very helpful either, I would imagine.
That's why they don't do it. They just, there is in house mice, especially to the first generations, there is such well, mind you, in the 50s and 60s there's a huge resistance. It may have changed, that's a lot of generations of mice, and I think this comes back down to, as we were touching on before, we have the CRRU tail sampling program, which you can use, but there are some misconceptions around that, and I'll speak very briefly on behalf of RRAG here, which is, when you put tail samples in, a lot of people think you're going to get an answer straight away. You don't. You get an answer when there are enough tail samples having been sent in to run a batch PCR testing program. So with that, the tail samples are important, but they're not instantaneous. And I'll let Nigel explain why they're so important to what CRRU's trying to do at the moment and how that's been influencing some of the product choices that we have.
Yeah, so sorry, I got distracted a little bit by Marcus's comment there. But tail sampling, CRRU used to get their tails tested at the APHA laboratory in England, and recently we were in a position for quite a few months where we weren't able to test samples because our contract with AFA had expired, and we were looking for a new provider. We've actually got one up and running now, and that's SASA in Scotland. And they've been up and running for a few months now, but during the period where we didn't have a provider, we weren't really promoting tail samples and the testing service that takes place. Now that we've got a provider up and running, it would be great if you could spread the word and submit your tail samples. We don't really just want samples from areas that we know to be problem areas. It would be great if we could have a broad cross section of tails from around the country, so that we can continue to understand how resistance is occurring through the UK. So thanks for that, Alex.
If we ask for a broad sample rather than from where we think resistance is prevalent, are we not going to push, not a narrative, but are we not going to give the impression that resistance is across the country? Because what will happen is you're only going to get the tails on the ones that you think are resistant. So if you ask for all tails, if you ask for a dip sample of tail samples, then you might look at it and say, actually, we're finding resistance is a very small figure in 1 in 100. I'm gonna just go crazy on this. 1 in 100. But people are reporting it. It's probably because we're not using it right. We're underestimating the size of the population. We don't have to go down don't have to go down that route. If we ask for tail samples to be sent across the whole country from rats that we think are only resistant, then what's going to happen is it's going to look like we have this herd of super rats running across the country, and that poisons don't work on them anymore.
I think we're saying the same thing, though, Sean. That send samples from across the country so that we can get an unbiased picture of what's going on. We tend to get tail samples from problem infestations.
Yeah.
And it's not just those problem infestations that we want tail samples from. So a broader picture. Yeah.
I get you. So because I would have thought that if I have a rat problem and I sort it out and I kill it, that it's sort of a waste of time and me sending samples in because we don't think it's out. But what you're saying is, no, send them on. You catch rats, grab some tail samples, send them in.
Yeah, I appreciate it takes additional effort, but if people could get some sample packs and send those through when that situation occurs, that would be fantastic.
Interesting.
And you can actually see the sampling bias in the data that we've got, because you look at the data and there is this black hole. It's the Midlands donut, where there is not just a susceptibility to rodents necessarily in the middle of the country. There's simply just no data there. Is that confirmation bias? Is that, as we said before, there's not a problem, so I don't send things in? But there definitely is just a big hole in the middle of the UK where we have very little data off the back of that. And why is that? Is it geography? Is it the fact that we've moved away from the coast? We don't know, because there's no data being moved in from that. So send them in.
Midlands, if it's the Midlands, is that potentially because they've just accepted that resistance is there? So it's in their mind, it's pointless testing for it. They're just going to deal with it like they are resistant.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody just asked where these packs can be got, and if you go on the CRRU website, you can apply for a pack to be sent through to you, and that will be sent out free of charge, and then you'll be able to you'll have what you need to be able to submit the samples.
Yeah. I tell you what, the one thing I did want to say, and I agree with Patricia, in when all is said and done, I'm actually quite impressed that Nigel came on this podcast. I agree 100%, especially knowing how passionate professional pest controllers feel about CRRU. Yep. And feel that they're being persecuted for rodenticide residues in barn owls. Yep. That takes balls, Nigel. Thank you. And I agree with that 100%. I know I might come across as a bit stickly and prickly, but I don't mean it like that. It is just that passion that comes through. And I do want to say thank you very much for turning up, because, there's went for far too long without anyone speaking to, haven't we?
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Just to cycle back very quickly, we've got a couple of mentions about the resistance maps, and Marcus has mentioned the actual RRAC resistance map. I'm just going to share it with you now very quickly. This is what the resistance map looks like. So this is where your data goes when you send in tail samples. This is what it ends up looking like. Can we see that? There we go. So that's a map of the UK, and as you can see quite clearly there, I was talking about that, the donut effect. You know, that's the I would say the lack of, but the reduced number of samples in the middle of the UK. But if you want to ever find out what your sort of resistance status is in the area, so this is down where I live, over in Basingstoke, and you can see there it will tell you the different types of resistance that you find. So L120Q, Y139C, 139F, and even some of the hybrid strains within that. You know,
can I make a suggestion on that, Al? Can I make a suggestion on that? That when you put it on, instead of saying, put it back on there so I can see one. Yeah, so it's got like L2 and L. Would it be, I think it would be very useful for pest controllers if instead of seeing what that strain is on that thing where they can click on it, it just tells them what they're resistant to.
Oh, that information is on this website as well. And like there's a whole preamble to this website that will tell you there's a color coded red, amber, green, although I think it's just red and green list now of what works where. I think they do it like this just for the sake of ease, let's say, to be able to get that information across easily at that point. But no, I don't disagree. But if you want to find more information on how each of these works, I think you just go to here, rodent control, and it will give you all of that information that you need.
I'll tell you one of the things that might be worthwhile running through people, because it is a little bit of can be a bit of a ball ache on it. The actual samples that you can take, or should take and should send in, and the conditions on them and when you should send them as well. Because there's like days of the week and stuff, isn't there? And they've got to be fresh. They've got to be how much you take, etc., etc. Because when I first got it, I was like, oh, fucking hell. Like, it takes a little bit. You think it's just chop the tail off, put the tail in the thing, put it in a bag and send it off. But it's not quite as easy as that, is it? Or it can sometimes not be quite as easy as that.
Yeah, and just that's true, Sean. And just a couple of points here. So John was asking about, are the kits prepaid? They're not prepaid at the moment. We did look into that, but it's quite it's a more complex process than we thought. So at the moment, you'd have to pay to send the samples back. And Majestic Wildlife raised a point about losing confidence because losing confidence in the sampling because they've not been able to get the results. Now, there is a form to fill in with the sample, and if you fill in that form, that will ensure that you get the test data from the tails that you send in. The only thing I would mention is it's not a commercial service to help you treat an infestation. Unfortunately, it's a data collection exercise so that we start to understand resistant profiles across the UK, and the turnaround of the samples can't be guaranteed. So basically, the lab will collect samples until they've got enough to run a batch on their testing equipment. And if we're getting lots of samples, then the turnaround is going to be faster than if we don't. So okay.
That's not to say it can't be used commercially. You can take historic data from your region. You can go onto those websites and you can have a look in your postcode checker and see where those resistances are more likely to be occurring, and then run it on a probability. And so you can make a marketing effort out of this. You can justify your product choices, you can justify your strategies, why you're going for a physical control strategy over necessarily a chemical control strategy, why you're choosing Coley over S-gas, why you're going for difecume over difenicum. You can have those conversations based on evidence that has been historically recorded. Just because you don't have the data from that rat from that person's garden doesn't mean that you can't base your conversations or your strategies off historic evidence with that.
I would say
if you see what I mean. So
different active, wouldn't it?
Hmm?
If what I'm saying is it's not going to tell you that your rats are resistant, but what it is going to do is it's going to at least give you some sort of information on deciding the next active ingredient that you're potentially going to use, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's better to do that. It's better to have some information than zero information, isn't it?
Nice. Forewarned is forearmed, I think is the expression. Right, we're coming up to the last 5 minutes of the podcast now. So rather than bombarding you with any more questions, what we'll do is we'll not go to our final three, but we'll go to our penultimate fourth and say, Nigel, is there anything that you wanted to ask Sean or I with this? Any question from your CRRU hat on or from your Nigel hat on that you'd
honestly,
like to
Nigel,
ask us?
you can get me back. You can get us back. Feel free, go for it. The worst of the worst, I'll take it on the chin.
No, I don't think there's anything in particular. I think though that we may need to do this again sometime in the future, just so that we can keep the communication channels open. There's a lot of history to CRRU, and we play a certain role, and it's important that everybody does understand the role we play, because as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to do our best to keep these products in your toolkit. So but other than that, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been a roller coaster.
Before we ask you the final three questions, I would say stay on afterwards, because if you are keen on coming back and having a conversation, I think it'd be really nice to be able to have, I wouldn't say a standing feature, but certainly to invite you back at a semi-regular basis to talk about the CRRU updates, to talk about the changes in what we're seeing in the industry, and the rest of it. So don't disappear afterwards, because I'm sure Hugh would love to strong arm you in for another one of these. But with that, I'll put them up. There we go. You put them up. So I'll ask the first one then. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Yeah, it's been good. So I hope you've found my input valuable.
Absolutely. And I have to say,
absolutely. I don't want you thinking that I'm negative to you. I'm like, it is absolutely useful, and it's great to be able to ask genuine questions and get genuine answers. So you'll never not get a massive thank you from me from it, because it is can be a bit of a shit show kind of, but you've done really well. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so you've come on, you've had a nice chat. A lot of people that come on say, yeah, it wasn't as terrifying as I thought, and they didn't have anything to worry about. You, on the other hand, came in, did it also again from me. Big thank you. It's been fantastic being able to sort of discuss some of these quite emotive points in our industry, which are only going to get more and more dicey at the closer we get to January 26. So thank you for shedding some light on them. Sure.
Yeah. Give us a shameless plug of anything, Nigel. You wrote a book, not like that.
No, but what I would like to plug is the communication. Our communication group is really trying to grow our social media following. So if those of you on the call would like to sign up to our X profile, so that we can start to get the message out to more people, so when we are communicating stuff, we're getting out to a bigger audience, that would be great. That's at Think Wildlife is our tag.
Awesome. Can we do something with that, Al, where we could maybe put it on in the comments when anything comes out at the start of the show?
Perfect.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that it's up there. Make sure that we have some links to it. Hugh can include it in his circulars as well. We'll definitely, this podcast is here to help everyone at the end of the day. And if getting the message across and getting to as many people as we can, then brilliant. So I'll ask the last question then, which is who would you like to see in the hot seat next?
Yeah, well, originally, I knew you were going to ask this question, and originally I was going to suggest that you got Savas on, and when I looked through your back catalogue, I realised that he'd already been on a couple of months ago. So I'm probably going to pick on a couple of ex-colleagues of mine. So Matt Green or Andy Brigham from Rentokil would be, I think, great people to have on the podcast. They're both 20 years plus in the industry. One on the sort of the entomology side, one on the rodent side. But yeah, they've got a vast amount of knowledge that I think would probably be really interesting for you.
Here's a question for you just before you go, both of you. I would love to get someone on from one of the big firms to talk about key accounts and the way big firms deal with them, because I think a lot of the smaller guys don't understand that sort of mindset to larger key accounts. Can either of you think of a person who would be suitable as a guest to come on and give a good chat about that? Really informative.
Going through my file of facts.
Yeah, I could probably give you a couple of names, but I don't know what role they're currently doing, to be honest, because I've not been in touch with them for a few years. But I could take a look and let you know, Sean.
Oh, thank you. If anyone does know someone, tell them to come on. I wanted Brian O'Donnell to come on, but he's petrified, so he won't.
Perfect. Well, with that, you're getting a huge amount of appreciation and love in the comments there. So once again, from all of us here, thank you ever so much. And that's us at the 1 hour 30 mark. So I think with that, we'll all say goodbye, and I'll see you all on the other side. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.